Hello and welcome to Addicted to Lacrosse. This is Season 2, Episode 24, the final one of the year. Today is Sunday, June 7th, 2015. My name is Graham Parrow. With me, as always, are Melissa Daphne and Tyler Fitch. And as I said, this is the last show of the year. We've only have one game to talk about, but it was quite the game. The final game of the season, obviously Game 2 of the championship finals, in which the Edmonton Rush defeated the Toronto Rock 11-10 to win the championship. All three of us, I'm pretty sure, were watching this game, and so we've got a fair bit to talk about. I've got a bunch of notes here, and I don't want to go over all of them right away because I'll be just talking for 20 minutes. But I'll just start off by saying it was an awesome game. Despite the fact that I'm a Rock fan and I saw my team lose, it really was a great game. There was lots of offense, but it was weird. There was good offense, but it was a defensive game. The goaltending was outstanding. There was transition. There was scoring chances. There was everything. Brandon Miller, I thought was I was going to say was the player of the game. I guess you could argue Mark Matthews was probably the player of the game, right? Quite honestly. But on the defensive side, Brandon Miller was a player of the game. He had an outstanding game. And it just looked to me like he was out there thinking, if we do lose this game, it's not going to be my fault. And he lived up to that. I thought he had a great game. Aaron Bold was also excellent. I would have said Miller was a little better than Bold, but both defenses were really strong. And each one let in a couple of goals that were kind of on the softer side. But the number of holy crap did he really save that kind of saves on both sides was amazing. So Colin Doyle played really well in the second half. I didn't think he had a great first half. Maybe it was because they were trying to deal with the loss of Brett Hickey for the first time this season. And that was a little weird, but again, it's not like Doyle played with Hickey an awful lot. He played throughout the playoffs and one game in the regular season. But I thought he played really well in the second half. Kevin Crowley, I'm starting to like a lot more. He's not going to put up Garrett Billings type numbers, so comparing him that way isn't really fair. But he plays really well off ball, and he's pretty darn good defensively as well. Now he's a really big guy, so that probably helps. And what can you say about Mark Matthews? He's just taken control of that offense, and he was just shooting from wherever he wanted to and just putting the ball in whenever he wanted to, almost. So he was definitely the game MVP. Melissa, I guess I'll turn it over to you and see what you thought, and I'll have a couple more thoughts later.
Yeah, I think we'll be going a lot more back and forth on this one because there was just so much. I would definitely have to echo what you said. This was a phenomenal game. This is the type of game when you're watching it, this is what you want to see for the championship. You don't want to see, well, maybe it's just me. Personally, I don't want to see a blowout. I would much rather have that edge of the seat, you don't know who's going to win kind of game. And this one was really close pretty much the whole time. It was definitely a battle of the goalies. Some of the saves from both sides was just nuts. Those kind of saves that you're like, wait, did he really just save that? How did he save that? Like, there's no way he could have seen that. It was great. The offenses looked good. There was definitely some mistakes on both sides, some questionable calls, but hey, it's LaBranche. But, it was a great game. And I think if you were a Toronto Rock player, you can't be too upset with how you performed because you gave it all, and a couple different bounces one way or the other, and it could have been a completely different game. So you can't even put that on the refs or anything. It was just a lot of good lacrosse. Drop pass here, drop pass there might have made a difference. It's hard to say. But it was definitely one of those games that it was exciting. If you were new to the game, this would probably have gotten you hooked. What are your initial thoughts, Tyler?
Yeah, it's just about a perfect championship game. Get to the point where last goal wins. That's super intense, very exciting. To be there in person probably was something amazing. So I think those 12,000 people hopefully did not see the last game in Edmonton and instead got hooked on something special. Miller looked like a completely different goalie from a week ago. I mean, it was a huge difference, 15-9 versus 11-10. I don't know if he was 4 or 5 goals different from last week, but it looked kind of close to it. The Rock defense also stepped up a little more aggressive than a week ago. They didn't give the Rush the chance to take a lot of the early aggressive shots that they did. So there's a lot of changes that made a difference. Made this game closer than it was a week ago. So I don't know. The thing in my mind is really wondering is if this Miller effort happened a week ago, do and then being at home, is that enough for the Rock to have won that game? Could have been a huge difference. You got to have top goalie play all the time, and so it kind of bit him a week ago, and then ended up costing him here at the end. The Rush definitely are worthy champions. I feel like the last few years, the Rochester, they kind of just went through the regular season to get to the regular season, put together a great month of games, and won a title. Maybe they're the best playoff team, but I don't know if they were the best team throughout the whole season. The Rush have a strong argument that they're the best team throughout the season. Um, so I'm happy to see them win. Definitely a fun game to watch and a great way to end this NLL season. Graham, you had a few more thoughts maybe you wanted to share?
Yeah. The one thing I mentioned last week when I was making my prediction for this game was that if Toronto plays in game two the way they played in game one, then it's over and Edmonton wins in two straight. Now Edmonton won in two straight, but that was not what happened at all. The Rock, like you both said, have really stepped their game up from game one. Um, they just got beat by a better team. Yeah, you can't fault the Rock for losing that game. It was more that Edmonton won it, and I know there's a subtle, possibly non-existent difference between those two. Um, but yeah, like I said, all aspects of the Rock game were very good, very strong. Um, Edmonton's were just better. Um, I thought it was kind of nice for Matthew Dinsdale to score the game winner, seeing as he was kind of a pickup at the trade deadline from Calgary and I think they got him for a third round draft pick or a fourth round draft pick or something. There wasn't even anybody heading the other way. So kind of nice for him to pick up the game winning goal, and it wasn't even on a great shot. He just kind of threw it at the net, and it went through Brandon Miller. And it looked like I've looked through his stats, and I'm pretty sure that was the first game-winning goal in his career. So to give his team the championship with a minute left in the fourth quarter, that's pretty special. There was a couple of questionable penalty calls, and I'm not usually one to worry about the refereeing, and I can't say the refereeing was bad in this game, but the one call against Damon Edwards, where he hit somebody into the boards and was given a 5-minute major for boarding. I think that was too harsh. I did mention that on Twitter and got 4 or 5 instant retweets from other people saying, yeah, that was a bad call. I can see them giving him 2 minutes for checking from behind on that one. I'm not going to say that wasn't worthy of any penalty at all, but 5 minutes was too much. And then I guess 4 or so minutes later, because it was just near the end of that penalty, it looked like Matthew Dinsdale did something similar, and they gave him 2 minutes for checking from behind, and that I don't think should have been a penalty at all. It almost looked like, yeah, we probably gave him too much, so now we'll give the other team a penalty just to make up the difference, but that shouldn't have been a call at all. So the Rock did okay during that power or that penalty kill, a 5-minute penalty kill, but that late in the game, could that have been the difference? Could that have? I mean, we could sit here and play what if all night long, but nice to see 12,000 people in Rexall for that game, and they were loud. Every angle I saw from the TV angles and various pictures that were posted on Facebook and Twitter and stuff, there was a ton of people there, and it was nice to see. Um, the last thing you want to see in a championship game is well, I mean, you're not going to see a sellout anywhere necessarily, but you don't want to see the championship game and everybody's hoisting the cup and there's only 2,000 people there. And I guess we were kind of I was nervous that was going to happen in Edmonton, but they must have pumped the crap out of the game because a whole lot of people showed up and they were loud, and I'm really hoping that increases interest, whether it's from the Oilers or from Bruce Urban or from whoever, to get some kind of deal done and keep the team in Edmonton, because it would be really horrible just for them to win the championship and say, "Yep, we won the championship. Now we're out of here," and leave the town and leave those 12,000 people thinking, "We just won it. Why are you leaving?" So it'd be nice if that had something to do with the team staying in town. I don't know how confident I am that's going to happen, but I guess here's hoping. Yeah, what else? Does I have anything else I wanted to say? Yeah, that was about it. Melissa, any further thoughts?
Yeah. Well, as I already said, LeBranch is one of my most frustrating refs, and that's part of what frustrates me. Like you just said, in general, he can call a really clear game, but then he'll have these calls that make you just go, "What the hell?" Like, this makes absolutely no sense. Although I do have to say that when it comes to the replays, he really takes the time and really pays attention. And so when he makes that call, whether it's for or against a team or that it was inconclusive, he took the time and he really is thorough on that. And usually I know I actually agree with most of the calls he makes, whereas we've definitely had refs in the past, like Couture, that usually you're like, did we just watch the same footage? So I do have to say with that, it is some of the inconsistencies. He'll overcall a game and then he'll undercall, and so I think it can be frustrating both as a fan, and I'm sure it's frustrating for the players because you're like, wait, what am I allowed to do this game or not? Because you just called it and now you're not calling it, and oh wait, now I could got away with this 5 times, but now you're calling it on a 5-minute penalty, or it's just random stuff. But like you said, that could have had a huge shift in the momentum of the game. In fact, Toronto actually scored a shorthanded on it, so it really didn't impact them like it could have. But you're giving your opponents 5 minutes. Yeah, that could have been big. There was definitely a huge shift in the momentum. It was 2 minutes or so left in the third. Hellier scored and it was challenged and it was called back. So they basically went from, okay, now we're 2 points up. Edmonton immediately scored and then we had a tie game again. So that was definitely one of those points in the game that you're like, wow, this could have just blown the game wide open, but instead it brought it right back into that just really tight space that you really need a bounce to go your way, whereas it wasn't before. And gotta say, if Mark Matthews wouldn't have gotten MVP, Bull totally would have earned that. He really was standing on his head, and there was a huge, huge save with like a minute left in the game when Colin Doyle shot, and he just stonewalled it. It was like, oh, that's the game. But up until that point, like, you didn't know. It was like, is this going into overtime? My husband and I were actually kind of betting because he was cheering Toronto and I was cheering Edmonton, so it was fun. And it was like, oh, is this going to go in overtime? And it was just an awesome game. I would be really disappointed if Edmonton loses the team. They started slow, but they're showing that there is fan support there. It's a strong team, and maybe like with Calgary, if Bruce Urban is that resistant when there's a market there and there's a buyer there, then maybe it needs a firmer hand. And I hate to say that because I don't like when authority has to come in and be like, no, you're going to do it this way. But it just doesn't make sense. It's a shame with Minnesota, but it sounds like that was in the works a little longer. So, and we know they've been struggling the past few years. But if Edmonton's able to get 12,000 to a championship game, and I think they're averaging still around 8,000, 9,000 maybe regular season, they've definitely got the fan base that they should to be able to thrive. What about you, Tyler? What do you think?
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention was Brett Hickey rolling his ankle in the morning shoot around, which I guess rarely happens. Or if it does happen, and maybe it's not a huge player, so you kind of sometimes see a person dressed that you don't expect, but not a guy who scored 50 goals and who really anchored their offense all season. And to lose that piece, I was amazed that the Rock got the offense going that they did to some extent. They kind of reverted back to their older, go with what they know. Casey Barron sitting on the crease and just quick sticks and trying to get goals that Sanderson and Doyle have been doing for years for him. Hellier's been there for a couple years, so he knows it. But Kevin Crowley hasn't, and so he didn't really flow in with that part of the offense in my mind. And there's not much you can expect from him to do. He's only been there 2 months. But given time, he can definitely contribute more, use his big body, set screens. We talked about Crowley in the past. He's just an interesting player. Big body, has moments of total brilliance, but never moments of domination. And they could have used somebody to step into Hickey's role and score a bunch of goals and dominate for them on Friday night. They didn't get it. What do you think? How do you think your offense went there, Graham?
In general, I think they did okay. Like I said, Colin Doyle had a great game. I didn't see an awful lot from Josh Sanderson. Let me take a look at the numbers here. I guess he had a goal and 3 assists. LeBlanc had a goal. Crowley had a goal. Colin Doyle had 2, and Hellier had 2. And then they got 1 from transition from Jeff Gilbert. So I guess, Hellier had 6 points. It kind of looks like a fairly typical Rock game throughout the season, other than the numbers are a little lower, but Hellier near the top. Casey Behrens had 2 goals. I missed out. It certainly would have been nice to get Brett Hickey in there. And it's odd because I saw a couple of tweets from the Rock saying that Hickey was going to be out because he rolled his ankle on the turf. And then I saw a bunch of tweets from other people, from I think some players as well as fans, saying, yeah, the turf in Rexall is really terrible. We've known that for years. And I don't think I'd ever heard that before. Now, maybe I don't pay an awful lot of attention to whether the turf's any good or not in various places. But there were a couple of people talking about it like it was common knowledge. Like everybody knows that the turf in Rexall is no good. But yeah, I thought it was the first time I'd heard about it.
Yeah. Team's been there 10, 11 years, and if they haven't bought new turf, it would definitely be aged.
Yeah, I know the Mammoths turf is really starting to look really bad. And you got to figure they only have, a year or 2 on the Rush. So, yeah, I could see it being in a little bit of bad shape. Although I thought he'd actually stepped on a ball or something, not the turf. So maybe there was a misunderstanding there on our side.
I think they did say during the broadcast, but I think it was a guess that maybe he stepped on a ball or something. That I had read tweets saying that it was the turf. I don't know what the actual cause was. but hopefully it was a fairly minor injury and he's not, broken his ankle or anything. As far as I could tell, it was just a minor thing, but enough that he couldn't play that night. And I imagine when you're looking at what's probably the last game or what could possibly be the last game of the season, and if you don't win it, it's over, for him to be taken out to the point where he can't actually play at all, it must have been pretty serious. Because if it was just, yeah, it's going to hurt, but I'm going to get out there anyway. Um, I mean, this league's full of players like that who are just going to get out there and play through pain if they can play through pain at all. And if it's just not possible at all, then it's got to be pretty serious. So what? One other thing. I did see Ben McIntosh scored one goal. Yeah, one goal and 4 assists. I didn't hear his name all that much. So maybe he was kind of maybe playing a little more in the background than usual. I don't know, but Zach Greer had to make a million shots. It seemed it was maybe it was just the first quarter. He had about 5 shots, but it seemed like every time he turned around, Zach Greer was in there shooting. Matthews had a bunch of shots as well, and Robert Church played pretty well. But I do remember thinking McIntosh scored his goal, and I remember thinking I hadn't heard his name much at all this game, so I don't know what was going on there. Yeah.
Yeah, Robert Church, according to the score sheet, says that he had 12 shots on goal. Mark Matthews had 14, and that Greer had 10. So all of those are definitely high numbers. But Greer only scored once, whereas like Mark Matthews scored 5. So he definitely was finding the net.
And McIntosh only had 3 shots. All right, I guess we can move on to our predictions for the game, which were the same as last week, actually. Melissa and I both picked Toronto to win Game 1, and we were wrong. And we thought Toronto would come back and win Game 2, and again, we were wrong. So Tyler was 2-0 in the finals. Melissa and I were 0-2 in the finals. But overall, I'm still 5-3. Sorry, Tyler. Tyler and Melissa both ended up at 4-4 for the playoffs.
If you weren't such a homer, you could have won the Isle Indoor pick'em, or at least tied Marty O'Neill.
Oh, I didn't see what happened in the.
Everybody else picked
picks.
Edmonton. Everybody but you picked
Everybody
Edmonton.
picked Edmonton. Oh well.
Well, to be fair, these were pretty well balanced teams. So even if you were going with a homer pick, it wasn't totally a homer. I expected this to go to 3 games, so that's the risk when you're picking it. I thought Edmonton was going to take the cup eventually. I just thought it was going to be across 3 games, not 2.
Yeah, and quite honestly, and I wrote this on my blog today, if Edmonton's going to win it, I'm pretty glad that they won it at home. Like I was mentioning earlier, the fact that they had that many people there, and the fact that they had a great game, and the fact that they got to see the cup lifted and everything like that. It's nice for the Edmonton fans to get something like that, particularly if it's the last game there. Hopefully it's not. But I do remember, now this is, I guess, 10 years ago now, the Ottawa Senators were a really good team for a number of years, and they were winning, regular season all the time, and they just, and actually some friends of mine live in Ottawa, and they would say, yeah, the regular season is just a way to get to the playoffs. We know we're going to get to the playoffs. We want to see what happens in the playoffs. Regular season, like, let's move it along and get to the playoffs. And then they got to the playoffs, and they made the cup final once and never won it. And it then, after a while, their players started to get traded or got older or retired or whatever it was, and that window where they were a really good contending team closed, and they never won the cup in that time. So it's good to see a team that's like that in the sense that they're such a dominant team, and the window for when they can win the cup is open because they have such a dominant team. I'd like to see them. I like to see them actually do it. I kind of felt bad for people like the Calgary Roughnecks, who had 4 or 5 seasons in a row there where they were either first in the West or first in the league, and then got taken out in the playoffs. And I think they won 1 cup in that time where they were really dominant for a number of years. So it's kind of too bad. And then you see somebody like Rochester who finishes below 500 and wins the cup. So it seems like it's fair that Edmonton won it this year, and I'm glad they did it at home. Okay, one other thing we wanted to talk about. Where did it go? Um, Expectations for next season. What do we think will happen in the off season? Um, I'm gonna say we're gonna have Lacrosse in Georgia. That's my prediction. Going
Ooh,
out on a limb
coming
on that
off
one.
that limb, you're getting a little far out there.
Yeah, I know it's kind of crazy, but that's what I see. Um, I'm really hoping the Rush stay in Edmonton. Something tells me they're not going to. Um, Now, George Daniel has talked in the past about expansion. Um, I don't know if that's in the works for 2016 or if that's more of a 2017 thing. Um,
Was
but
he on your halftime broadcast? Did they show the interview they had with him?
yep,
Okay. You mentioned a little bit, but I guess they're really finicky about the owners.
yeah, I think
Arlotta
they've
really loves lacrosse. Denise Watkins, like her son still plays, so like she very much loves lacrosse and Stealth owner. But Urban, I think he just wanted a pro team in his hometown, and he found lacrosse, and they wrote a check and they got him. He's wrote it out quite a while, but I don't think he has the background. I think they're trying to find somebody which is a very small pool of contenders, but somebody who really has an interest in lacrosse, so they're not going to cut rope after a few years.
yeah, I guess they'd rather have somebody who's really passionate about it and has the money rather than just has the money and is hoping for an investment. Because I mean, if you can find another Denise Watkins or another Kurt Stiers or somebody who's going to be a really great owner like that, that's what you want. Um, the company that has bucket loads of money but couldn't care less about lacrosse is likely not going to be what you want, because I think that's what they had in Chicago. And basically,
Boston as well.
as soon as it became inconvenient for them, they said, "Yeah, okay, we're done." Um, and that's what business people have to do. If they've got something there that's not making them money, they got to cut it and go, and that's what they're going to do.
Or even if it's making money and it's just not doing the return on investment that they predicted or are requiring, they cut and run, which is supposedly what the Lumberjacks did. So
Yeah, yeah. So I had one more. What was the other one I was going to say? Oh, I don't know if there's an expectation or more of a hope. And I put this in another one of my blog articles. I keep pimping my blog today. Was NHL ownership. I don't know if that's something that the league is actively investigating, or if it's just, well, if we can get that, would be great. There was talk of the Swarm moving to Nashville before the whole Georgia thing happened, and there was talk about the Nashville Predators owning the team, and I thought that would have been a good thing. I have no idea whether Nashville's a good market or not, but I imagine the NHL owning an NLL team obviously seems to be working in Colorado, working in Buffalo, it's working in Calgary. I really don't want it to happen in Toronto, but maybe Nashville could make something like that work. Melissa, what do you think?
yeah, this was a tough one. One thing I think we're going to see next season is several teams really overhaul their teams again. Whether that's a good or bad thing is up to discussion, but I do expect several teams to really just kind of rip their teams apart and almost start over. Unfortunately, I see John Grant Jr. still playing for the Mammoth. I don't want that. Although I think we will be seeing John Gallant probably retire. I didn't think he was going to play this season, and then he really didn't play more than a couple games this season. So, since he is the last original player from the Washington Power, that's actually really a sad thing. He's just had such an impact on the team. It'll be a sad day to see him go. Be interesting to see if he follows up with what he said he was going to do once he retired, and if we'll see him in a reffing uniform. But who knows? I think it's gonna be interesting next season. I think we're gonna see some big changes. And I really do. I hope Edmonton stays and that they're competitive. It's just for so long they were kind of like, oh, that's an easy win. So to see them actually play hard and dominate most of the season and take the cup, it's like they've been the underdog for so long, and I've been rooting them for them so long. It's like I know you can't take this away. So they're like one of my second teams. Although I'll admit, pretty much all the teams in the West I cheer on pretty frequently, and several in the East. So okay, I guess anymore I'm more a fan of just the game than a specific team since the players move so much. I don't know if I have much else. What about you, Tyler?
Boy, um, I'll make a wild prediction that an established goalie like Tyler Richards retires unexpectedly.
Now you're getting crazy.
Yeah, that's going out there. But on the Georgia side, I would make a maybe wild prediction that they'll be successful and they'll be a hit. When they announced the move, I was like, oh yeah, they've got an NHL team there. They've got the Thrashers, and then I went and researched it, and apparently the Thrashers left town 2-3 years ago to become the Winnipeg Jets revival. So they don't have a strong competition for a winter sport other than the NBA team, which was a good NBA team this year. They went to the Eastern Finals. But NFL will be wrapping up, and people will be like, "Oh, what's next?" And they can say, "Hey, let's go watch a lacrosse game out in that. Hopefully, I don't even know if it's a new arena, but out in that arena that's not the big main arena. But they got time now. They can already have like people on the ground. I'm doing marketing for them now to try and build this up, and I think they can take a lot of lessons learned from Minnesota and have some success. That's what I'm hoping to see for what I expect next season. And I guess it's a good thing that Minnesota flip-flop back and forth from East and West Division, but they're currently in the East because there's no realignment necessary now because they're now squarely in the East. I don't know. I can't make a single prediction on Edmonton. I have no clue how that's going to play out as far as their longevity and status as a team in business. But I'm a little worried there. And a team league would really, really suck. And I thought that if Minnesota didn't move and Edmonton didn't move, they'd be down to 7, and they'd have to make a radical change or some bad things like that. But they're not. They're down. We're at 9 still, and unless things change, we'll still be at 9. We'll just keep playing with what they do. Yeah, that's my thoughts there. Good luck in Georgia with the Swarm.
I expect we'll see lots of DU players drafted in the draft this year too.
Yeah,
we'll go out on that limb.
Yeah, I was just about to mention the draft. Actually, it seemed like the number 1 pick was unanimously going to be Wes Berg from DU, but seeing as Minnesota/Georgia has that first pick, I wonder if they may skip Berg and go straight to Lyle Thompson, and then have Lyle and Miles playing together, and I imagine that would be an awfully good thing for them, which would leave Berg going to Rochester with second pick. And whether Berg decides to actually play with the Nighthawks, or if they would pull a Jeremy Noble and wait and try and trade him for something else. I mean, it's not like their offense is struggling and they need some new blood in there. I originally thought, well, Dan Dawson's getting up there in years. He may be looking to retire soon, but he's maybe 33. It's not like he's 38 or something. So he's still got some years left. Assuming Cody Jamieson comes back from his injury, they may not be desperate for new offense. So if they draft Berg, then maybe they'll trade him for future draft picks or something. I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me at all to see a couple of Thompsons together in Georgia.
They got enough picks to pull it off, but it's also I want to say a sign that the league is not as big time as it thinks when you take the best available player, who I think is arguably Berg, and instead you draft somebody's brother to make your team more marketable with the number 1 overall pick. That's kind of nuts. I think it's going to happen. And it'll be good for them. It'd be very good for them, but I don't know if it makes them a better team on the floor.
Well, it's definitely interesting. I mean, we talk about the brothers, and there's definitely been pairs that it seems like it works really well, and there is that cohesion. But I mean, it's out a little bit with the Morgans, but like with the Geich brothers, it didn't seem like that helped at all. The fact that they were related, so they could have that same issue that, yeah, there's some chemistry there, but when you throw in all the other players on the team, it actually takes it away, and it could be a bad pick.
I think as an established player, it'd be hard to have the coach come in and say, all right, we got the second-year player and his little brother, and make sure the ball goes through them and everybody else just get out of their way. I'd be like, but we want to win. I'm good, right? And it'd have to work really well for there not to like be a mutiny among people saying just because they're brothers and they put up a ton of points together doesn't mean that they need to anchor our offense now. It's hard for rookies to have that big of an impact, especially for the entire length of a season.
And I mean, we've seen before success in college lacrosse doesn't necessarily translate to the same success in the NLL. My first thought is Zach Greer, who had an outstanding year this year, but prior to this year, I think he was up there. He was one of the better offensive players on the Rush, and before that, I think he played on the Swarm. But he was never the standout offensive player in the NLL that he was in NCAA.
Before the NCAA, he was a standout player in Ontario Junior Box. But then he got to college and they said, you need to stop playing box. Or he chose to, I think, because he was just getting wailed on and messing up his college. No, it's free ride. So, presumably free ride. I only imagine he had a scholarship. He's such a good player. But, so I think he took time away from boxing and lost that skill and did not immediately regain it, which is kind of surprising. But he has now, and he's kind of an elite forward again.
So yeah, and Miles Thompson was definitely good this year. Was he? Did he have an outstanding year? No, I don't think so. But he was up there in. I was going to say he was up there in Rookie of the Year voting. We haven't actually done that yet. We had the IL Indoor Rookie of the Year, and that was Ben McIntosh. And among the three of us, we decided that McIntosh should win it as well. But I guess Miles Thompson's going to be up there in the top 3 or 4 in that voting. But like you said, putting him together with his rookie brother, the chemistry may or may not work. We don't know that. Maybe they'll play well with Johnny Paulus. But if you're going to get the offense to go through them, where does that leave Callum Crawford? He's kind of the veteran there. You would hope they'd give him a little more control over what's going on in the offense there.
Well, as we've seen with some teams, if you really are forcing it through the wrong people, it doesn't matter how good of a player they are, it's going to kill the momentum, it's going to kill the offense.
And as we've seen, lacrosse is such a team game that if you do have all the offense filtered through one guy, it can work, but more often than not, it tends to not work. And I'm sure, Melissa, you've seen enough games in Colorado where if John Grant's having an awesome night, then everything goes through him and you guys win 15-6. But if he's not having an awesome night, even if he's just having kind of an average night and everything goes through him, it just doesn't always work.
Well, and I'm always ripping on John Grant Jr. a lot, but the same thing happened when we had Gary Gate. That a lot of times when it's forced through a player, the other team, that they know that's what's going to happen, and so they'll be triple covered where you have open guys that won't take the shot because they're still going to pass it to that player. So obviously more chance for interceptions or just a bubbled pass. And are they even going to get the shot off? So it is hard when you have that really big name player that is anchoring it, or if you're just trying to force it there. I think that's part of what made Edmonton work this year, and is it seemed like any offensive player had the go ahead to, you see a shot, you take the shot type of mentality. And that reminded me a lot of the 2006 Mammoth, which actually did win the Cup. That it was, the whole offense was deadly. It wasn't just one player. And I think we've seen it through certain teams that it's too focused on one player, and you lose that player, and all of a sudden you've lost the team. We saw it even with the Bandits a little bit with Steinhaus and Tavares. When they're not playing, the rest of the offense is kind of like, oh, wait, I don't know what to do now. So, yeah, I think having that flexibility is definitely better. And if they do try and force that, it doesn't seem like it is good. It makes it harder for the team to adapt, I think, in my opinion. And especially with the bigger name, higher caliber, the more it's forced through that person. Did you have anything to add, Tyler?
No, you summed it up perfectly.
Okay. I guess that will pretty much do it for this episode. A couple of other things I wanted to mention. We're going to look into making some changes to the show for next season, some improvements. Nothing huge, nothing major, but we've got a bunch of ideas. One of the things, and somebody specifically asked me about this earlier this week, so I wanted to address that, is the availability of the show on iTunes. And right now it's not there because right now it's done through Google Plus and it shows up on YouTube. But that's it. So one of the things that we wanted to do for next season, we actually tried to get it done this season and never managed to get there, is to make it into, maybe not change it into, but at least make it available as a true podcast, so that the audio only is available through iTunes. You can download it to your iPod and that sort of thing. So that's something that we'd like to get happening for next season. Yeah, we've got a few other ideas. If you've got any other ideas, anything that you'd like to see, anything that we're doing that you don't like, anything that we're not doing that we should be doing, anything that we're doing that you do like, any kind of feedback like that, we would love to hear it. AddictedToLacrosse.com is where all our old shows are. If you want to get a hold of us and let us know some of the feedback, Lax Podcast on Twitter. We're also on Lax Podcast on Facebook. And feedback at addictedtolacrosse.com. So let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. Let us know about anything that happened in the NLL this year that you're surprised about or that was really memorable. Any comments like that you want to make, that would be great as well. Melissa, you had something to say.
Yes. Part of why we actually have not gotten this into just a plain podcast is the programs that I used to use are no longer available, so FeedBurner has gone under. So if anybody knows of a good program or website, something to help automate this or make it easier, send those our way. We would love to hear, because unfortunately the ones that I know are no longer around. So help us out.
All right. Okay, so if you can help us out that way, that would be great as well. Yeah, so we're off for the summer. We do pay attention to the NLL news and things like that. So if there's some more team movement or a big trade or things like that, then we may do a show or two over the summer. The draft is in September. The annual awards thing is going to be the same as last year, so they're going to announce the nominees next week. And I confirmed this with George Daniel via Twitter yesterday, actually. So they're going to announce the nominees next week, and then they're going to have the big gala thing that they had last year in September. And
so we'll all have forgotten anything that has happened by then.
Pretty much, yeah. That's kind of what happened last year. So I guess they decided that was a good idea. So they're doing it again this year. So maybe they'll combine that and the draft. If I remember correctly, they were about a week or two apart last year, um, in September, about a week after the Mann Cup finished. So they picked the one time of the year where none of the Canadian box lacrosse players are actually thinking about the NLL, and that's when they do their awards
Except this
ceremony.
September we have the World Indoor Championships in
So
Syracuse area. So that'll be interesting to see if there's a conflict or tie-in.
hmm So there's even more reason to forget about the NLL, which I guess maybe that's why they're doing it, so that they try to stay in everybody's mind and stay relevant. But you'd think they could. I don't know. I think we've talked about this in the past. I don't want to get too much into it now, but I think the three of us agreed that doing it right after the season rather than waiting 3 months made more sense. Anyway, I guess that's about it for now. So this has been another episode and another season of Addicted to Lacrosse. For Tyler and Melissa, I'm Graham. Thanks for watching, and we will see you again next season.